This happened to me back when I was in college of July 2017. Our campus had a laundromat students could use 24/7. Judging I'm a bit of a procrastinator, I did my laundry always on Sundays late in the evening. Now, I'm a middle-aged guy, and it takes a lot to frighten me, and so this encounter truly changed my life. It was an ordinary night. I had just got my laundry together after partying with some friends. The fact was, I almost skipped out on doing my laundry till I realized I didn't have anything to wear to class the following morning. Anyway, as I entered the laundromat, I noticed a woman and her child, I presumed, in there. The woman looked somewhat older, and I thought they were dressed a bit old-fashioned. Call me judgmental, but I've never seen anybody dressed like a 1980s sitcom outside of a TV screen. Now, moving on, I set my clothes in the wash. As I reached for the detergent, I was then overcome with a feeling of anxiety and dread, like something bad was about to happen, and as I paused to look around, I noticed the woman and her child were gone. I didn't hear them leave, so I turned around to see where they had gone. Then, as their sudden appearance frightened me, I asked her could I help them? The woman replied, if I could watch her son while she used the bathroom. I anxiously agreed. As she walked away, I began to notice the awkward nature of this woman. She spoke in an awkward way, like English wasn't her first language, or like she was trying too hard. As I watched the boy, I noticed how he never made eye contact with me, always being sure to look down and away from me. I offered to give him my phone to play games, or just be nice to the kid, but he just stood there and ignored me. I asked him his name and still no reply. At this point, I thought he was just being a little dick, when I noticed him glance up at me and ask if he could come home with me. This unnerved me, and before I could reply, I noticed the woman had returned. Believing she'd put an end to this, I waited for her to approach, but she just stood near the bathroom door. I looked back down at the boy, and that's when my heart sank. His eyes. Oh God, those eyes. They were black, no white in them. He asked me again, can I come home with you? We can only enter if you let us, Chad. I jumped back, and that's when I saw the woman's eyes were the same, and that as they both started to repeat their questions, they seemed to be talking in sync. So I ran. I ran out of there as fast as I could, not looking back for anything. I went back to my dorm and woke my roommate. We went back to the mat only to find nothing. My clothes were still there, but the woman and her little demon boy, they were gone. My roommate and I reported the creepy woman and her son, but according to the dean, CCTV footage didn't show me interacting with anyone, just me talking to whatever. But I don't know. I really don't know what to make of this. Those black-eyed people. But as I said before, my life has become so much different knowing this. Just knowing that things like that exist. Let's face it, everyone hates laundry. And after what I'm about to tell you, I simply shudder at the thought of it. A bit about me though. I'm a woman. At the time of this event, my husband and I were in our late 20s. We were newly married and money had been a little tight, which is why we hadn't invested in a washer and dryer. Thus, instead of going to my in-laws to do laundry, my husband Joe and I decided the local laundromat would do. As we entered, I immediately noticed the rundown and dusty decorum. Hell, if I didn't hate my in-laws so bad, I'd just turn back around and promptly exit. However, against my greater judgment, Joe and I began loading up the washers. Everything seemed to be going okay, and, it wasn't too bad, but it was then I noticed just how many homeless people were sitting on the benches, and the only available one was next to this very sketchy-looking man. Having finished loading the washers, I made for the car, believing that, hey, Joe has to see how sketchy this guy is, and he'll follow me to the car. But what did he do? Lo and behold, he sat next to Mr. Creeps. I sat next to him, not wanting to leave Joe alone with him. As we sat, I felt the man staring at me. I avoided eye contact and began conversing with Joe. As we talked, Joe turned to the guy as we heard him ask if we had any spare change. Being friendly, Joe gave him $1. I believe he'd stop, but then the man asked for more. Joe politely refused, and it was then he got up and began to leave. He glanced at me as he left and said, "You got a real pretty one there, friend." We both thanked him as he exited. It was then I began to tell Joe just how uncomfortable he made me, when not even 20 seconds later, the man re-entered asking other patrons for change. We watched as people declined, some not so gentle. The man then became irate with this older gentleman who swore at him to get a job. The man angrily punched the older gentleman, and it was then Joe stepped between them and asked the man to stop. The man stared at Joe, then to me, and again demanded money. We refused, and it was then he pulled out a Swiss Army knife. I screamed, and he demanded I shut up. It was then the people and their children began fleeing. The man demanded my purse, and it was then Joe attacked him. As they struggled, I kicked the knife out of the man's hands. As Joe and the older gentleman restrained the guy, I immediately called the police, but was already informed that there was an officer en route. The man was arrested, and I was adamant about pressing charges. As we left, the older gentleman thanked us, as we did the same. I just hope that man is just off the streets. I mean, let's just be honest, I already hated laundry, but he truly ruined it for me. Like I said before, the whole experience just makes me shudder at the thought.